Could whoever'd like to start, it's fine. Could you give me some kind of a definition of group leadership coaching?
It's a type of coaching that takes into account the individual in a context with the support of a number of other executives in the same, can be the same team, can be in our case, in executive education programs, that through feedback, both written and spoken in the group, learn about themselves and their leadership style.
And what would you say is the advantage of the group situation that you describe over a one-to-one situation of traditional coaching?
You want to answer?
I think in group executive coaching, there's an opportunity to employ the minds, the hearts of various people. So it's simultaneously, it's a relationship between the coach, the coachee, and the fellow coachees who at the same moment play the role of participants in the discussions, but also as sources of information, ideas, thoughts, feelings, and reactions to what is going on in the group coaching discussion. So we have simultaneously an interaction of several minds, hearts, and experiences in one and the same room at the same time.
And so if I understand, what you're doing is building relationship not only between the coach and the coachee, to use the term, but also between the other participants in the group. So there are various relationships, individually as well as the group as a whole?
That is correct. So there are relationships between the participants, the members of the group, and the coach, and as group as a whole, as an entity, which is particularly important if this group is going to be working together, or in the context of executive education, where they're going to be supporting each other through their developmental journeys as they take this journey as part of their, for instance, executive MBA program or executive development program.
Could you give me an example of how this might work that would be different from an executive, say, just having a one-to-one coach?
Mm-hmm. Yes, one good example is our executive MBA program that we run, where participants sign up for a journey that lasts for more than 20 months, and they work together in study groups. On the one hand, in modules where they are on campus, but also a lot where they have distance learning, where they need to reach out to each other and support each other in assignments up to real-life projects. And this group coaching process that we're going through, where we spend a whole day opening up towards also the private arena, also towards challenges those people face in their corporate world, it's a very strong bonding effect that we see that contributes strongly to these relationships that people have then when they're not on campus. So it creates a sound basis for their work, for the whole MBA program, and what we typically see is that those home groups that start together in these group coaching sessions stay together way beyond the MBA program and become friends.
So you're forging a long-term support network in some ways, and it sounds also like you can use the group as the laboratory for the experiential learning. Am I understanding?
Less as a laboratory, but it's an environment of learning. We talk about creating a space where trust is created, where people can play with ideas, where people also bond in a very deep way, because usually what happens, it's not only talking about from coach to coachee, but between human beings, life experiences, people are invited to tell their story. And sharing your story is on the one hand an important challenge for you to formulate your story, but also for other people to learn from your life experiences. So we don't only focus on competencies that make good leaders, but actually it's a much more richer experience. And it's not a question of the professional giving advice to the coachee, but actually a sharing in a team.
The word that occurs to me is that it's in some ways an opportunity to brainstorm, and to the interactive piece of it is very important, I guess is what I'm hearing. Is it different when you approach an executive or you approach a company where there's someone who needs coaching to draw them into the group coaching situation? Is that a different set of discussions than if you were going to enroll them in individual coaching?
Of course, this is a different proposition, and I think initially this whole methodology grew out of INSEAD's Global Leadership Center's experience of working with top management teams. And when Manfred Kitz-de-Vries and Elisabet Engellau have experimented with this with boards of directors or with the top management teams, they realized that there is a synergy effect that goes from this discussion and that affects the whole organization. So, and then it was transferred to other programs at INSEAD, and eventually we at ESMT have borrowed that methodology and started offering this to companies when we are proposing executive development interventions. And what we notice is that in some situations it might be initially a surprise because people get concerned with the fact, well, are the individuals going to be using this? Are they going to open up? Is it going to be effective? But in reality, if we think about executive development programs as opportunities not only to help promote human capital or the development of individual qualities or help a participant become more efficient or effective in their role, but when we are talking about a broader impact on the organization, on the opportunity to create cohorts of people who have better trust, who can talk to one another at a deeper level, who can challenge one another in a less threatening way, who can collaborate on issues that don't have easy answers. We managed to convince organizations that this might be the actual first step where people learn to work together at a different level and where they are dependent on one another on getting ideas, thoughts, feelings, fantasies about further opportunities or new developmental steps, and where they can also rely on the support from the group. We think as an outcome of that, we can have a much higher level of cooperation and understanding among participants in executive offices in organizations. And then when we explain the rationale behind that, companies are much more willing to at least experiment with that. Of course, it requires an advanced HR or learning and development professional to be willing to accept that. And usually those HR people who have experienced it themselves are huge enthusiasts of the process. Now, if we see people who have never tried that, we usually spend time with them explaining the process or inviting them to experiment it themselves and see on their own example, being kind of the guinea pig for the organization, whether it works or not. So, but your question is obviously very legitimate because it might be a new proposition for many people and for many people who are using coaching.
Yeah. What's in my mind is that we've heard from many of our members and many of the attendees here challenges of even presenting coaching in perhaps companies or professions where it's not as well known, and then to go to the next level of bringing in a group is another piece. One of the primary missions of the Institute of Coaching is to continue to build the scientific foundation for coaching and the research. So can one of you talk to me a little bit about what the research is that is being conducted through your programs?
First of all, there's recently a publication that was prepared based on the experience of INSEAD Global Leadership Center. This is The Hedgehog Effect, book by Manfred Katz de Vries, that explains the process and how it works and gives full examples of how to structure an intervention of that type. We have experimented with transfer of the methodology from one institution to another, from one country to another, and that's what we've noticed is also working. But there have been a couple of recent publications and working papers coming out of INSEAD's and ESMT's work together that looks at the long-term effect of group executive coaching. At ESMT, we have an opportunity to compare participants' experiences after they have experienced group executive coaching. For instance, in our executive MBA program, participants go through the process of group coaching several times during their stay on campus, and we have a chance to measure the results of their 360-degree feedback, for instance. What we definitely notice is that there is a significant increase in self-awareness, and that's, as a minimum, is the first outcome of this developmental approach of this intervention. When it comes to effectiveness of management teams that have experienced that, well, I guess there's also a couple of cases that have been recently published at INSEAD that talk to that. Maybe Elisabet, you could say more about that.
I also wanted to mention INSEAD especially has a rather unique situation because our executives that come to our executive education come from all over the world, and we have no nationality more than 15% weight in any of the courses or programs that we have, or for that matter in faculty and in coaching coaches that we use.
It's a very multicultural situation all
yes,
around it.
with three campuses around the world at the same time. So cross-cultural research on the impact on coaching and group coaching, feedback. We have several instruments that we use in our group coaching where we have a large data bank that we can use for research when it comes to how this is experienced and used positively in Asian countries, for example, or other countries around the world, and the comparison basis there.
Have you had to make many adjustments for different cultures in the way that you manage the program?
We have coaches from the different countries, and we specifically are looking for coaches with multinational experiences. So the cultural sensitivity is one of the key ingredients in a coach experience that we use.
But also, just it's important to notice that, of course, participants might have different experience with coaching per se. There might be people who have never had any coaching experiences in the past. There might be individuals who have had extremely positive or extremely negative coaching experiences in the past. And of course, this can have an impact on the relationships within the team. That's why just a lot of attention is being paid to preparing people for participating in this experience. So in some programs, we send in advance information about what's going to happen. Always have a special session where we explain to participants what's the purpose of the exercise, how much effort it's going to take from them, and also what their rights are. So including the right not to participate, or including the right to decide what they want or do not want to talk about. So, and this is the job of the coach to enforce this particular process and create the psychological safety that is required in the process of going through group process. And also what we notice is that sometimes there are people who might be cautious, and then they might decide, okay, I'm going to watch what's going on there, but haven't seen that it's actually safe, despite the fact that it's very challenging, so they mostly change their opinion. It should be noted that, of course, for every program, there's always a program director who is available there in case people need extra support, in case there's something that the coach cannot handle during the process, in case a particular participant might be concerned about a certain developments in the group. So there's always kind of a support mechanism that exists there to help both the coaches, the coachees, and the whole group that is involved in the process.
There's multiple levels of support, is what you're describing.
Yes. And preparation. I think it's a very important aspect that you're pointing out, that there is a preparation. It's not a question of just having participants say, come into the group and then be faced with a situation that they have to be participant in this. But a preparation and that assurance that they own the material, the feedback that is shared in the group is owned by the participant.
Is the structure set so that there would be one coach and a number of participants in the group, or more than one coach?
So typically we work with one coach and a number of participants, say 4 to 6 participants, but often we also have an additional coach who would shadow the coach who would be the main coach, for 2 reasons. The one thing is that coaches always need to learn from one another. So when we get out the message that participants, executives need to learn continuously, it's the more truth than, of course, also for the coaches. This is the one thing. So to learn from each other and also to get to know the approach, the specific way how the other one is doing it. At the same time, it's also helping one another getting some feedback, because we always introduce the importance of feedback for one's own growth. So it's true for the coaches as well. So we as coaches need to develop ourselves. So therefore, after the sessions, we can reach out to each other and reflect what happened in the group process. How much was the coach part of the development? How much did transference and counter-transference actually happen in the group, not only on the side of the participants, but also on the side of the coach?
And so what I hear is that you're modeling in the session the same things with the coaches that you want your participants to learn, that they should be open to feedback, and you're showing them as well as telling them.
Ideally, yes. Of course, it's not always possible to have 2 coaches for one group, but we at least urge to have it more and more often.
If the shadow coach would not participate, though, they would just be an observer?
There are different settings. There are settings where the shadow would be in a more passive kind of stage where he would observe. And there are other ways where the shadow coach would take over, for example, the second case, the second coach and coachee, and would be then in the driver's seat.
If someone
Can I add something there? I
Of course.
think one other aspect of having 2 coaches in a group session like that is very beneficial, in the sense that you have one person who drives the process and the other person being more observant, possibly. They play different roles in that setting, more observant and also maybe more supportive in between sessions with the coaches.
If someone wanted to learn how to do group leadership coaching, how would they do that?
Well, maybe my personal example. So I learned it at INSEAD. I was working on my PhD at INSEAD, but then I took a course that was offered by the INSEAD Global Leadership Center, Consulting and Coaching for Change. That's a year-long program. It's a part-time program, so you spent about 8 or 9 modules at INSEAD, and as part
It's now a master's program.
Now it's a master's program at INSEAD. So as part of this learning process, you get the theoretical preparation, and you are constantly engaged in group coaching yourself. So you, as a participant in conference calls between the modules, where you're kind of in a telephone group coaching situation, group coaching session, and then eventually you have to do a lot of peer coaching. then you eventually do some shadow coaching, and finally at that moment you are on your own and you get feedback and discuss it with more experienced colleagues. So that's the system that is critically important, and that's again that was created at INSEAD, and that at ESMT we are also trying to reproduce in setting up discussions with the coaches before and after coaching sessions, or once a year bringing coaches together to discuss difficult coaching cases and get insights from the others on how they would have handled the case, what might be going on in the coaching relationships, what the role of the coach in the success or in the failure of a particular coaching intervention.
So I hear again a continuing commitment to long-term support and long-term interaction.
Support among the coaches, learning, and what we're describing here is a little bit an apprenticeship model of learning. So you can be a very good coach individually, coaching people individually, but to be able to do the group coaching, we then have this introductory shadow coaching and interaction between other coaches to learn.
Is there anything really pressing about this that I haven't asked you about that needs to be added here?
I just want to say one thing maybe, and that is people in a setting like this, it's delicate, so it's a very important aspect of our work to create trust in this group. And we usually work with these executives maybe 1.5 day, and follow-ups another half day or 2 days or so. So it's short-term interventions in one aspect, which means that the coach has to know about boundaries. It's very important to know what you can do, what you cannot do, and that people can walk away after a day and a half and feel that they have learned about themselves without having been in any way hurt.
That's actually part of the discussion I had with Manfred just before, about how important it is that the coach understand not only their own boundaries, but can teach the coachee that they need to respect their own.
And I think it's also crucially important that the coach really knows his boundaries and takes into consideration that the group dynamics can be extremely positive and helpful, and at the same time can be extremely powerful also in a negative way. And we had just a recent example where it was so crucial that the coach was really experienced in those group dynamics and could manage the situation, because there had been a group dynamic going on in that group even before the group coaching process started, and it surfaced in that process, and it turned out in the evening to be everything fine, and the group had received or achieved a higher level of awareness of what was going on, and the participant could be integrated into the group in a certain way, but he needed all his experience and all his education to really master that situation. So therefore it's also a warning for novice coaches, for people who are just starting to coach, to really reach out to more experienced people, to really learn it, because the very nice bull can also turn out to be a very strong bull.
Absolutely. I don't think that we can emphasize that point or the boundary points enough. My own experience says that you really have to be so careful and so aware all the time. Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you.